Get ready for Changing Worldviews with Sharon Hughes, the 30-minute show packed with an hour's worth of information, bringing you familiar guests on important issues such as immigration, education, the Middle East, culture, religion, and the changing worldviews of Americans and the world. You've seen her on Fox News, you've read her on the World Wide Web. Now here's Sharon.
For such a time as this.
Freeing the minds of the brainwashed masses.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in to this edition of Changing Worldviews. Today, wasn't signing up the uninsured the entire point of Obamacare? A pair of surveys released last Thursday suggest that just 1 in 10 uninsured people who qualify for private health plans through the new marketplace have signed up for one, and that about half of uninsured adults has looked for information on the online exchanges or plans to look. In the meantime, President Obama promised illegals that Obamacare information won't be used for deportation. In a town hall with Telemundo and Univision, President Obama made a pledge that his administration will not use Obamacare sign-up data to deport illegal aliens. Alan Greenspan said in the absence of the gold standard, there is no way to protect savings from confiscation through inflation. Deficit spending is simply a scheme for the confiscation of wealth. Gold stands in the way of this insidious process, unquote. And it's about to get worse. Look no further than Poland confiscating half of citizens' pensions. While the conflict between the Ukraine and Russia continues to garner global attention, a report from that region on Saturday claimed a cyber attack was launched against Ukrainian government computer systems by cyber terrorists, according to police and security forces in the Ukraine. Larry Anderson, senior editor for American Thinker, asked the question, is deconstructionism, which denies the existence of absolute truth, a valid way to interpret the Bible or any other form of literature? And that's what we're going to be talking about on today's show, including a segment of an interview that I had earlier today with Wesley J. Smith on his book, War on Humans. Is there such a thing as human exceptionalism? Should animals and the earth have the same rights as humans? How does deconstructionism fit into all of this?
David Suzuki, who is a rock star in environmentalism, has called human beings maggots on the planet who go around defecating all over the environment. He was offered a chance on a recent interview to take it back, and he refused, and he said, I just wish humans weren't so humans. People in the United Nations pushing this and so forth. So anyone who says it can't happen here has been asleep for the last 50 years. It is happening now.
You're listening to Sharon Hughes, coming to you from the Wild, Wild West, and we mean wild.
While Syrian refugees are starving and Russia and America fire threats back and forth over Crimea, the news media is focusing on the 2016 election, and surprising results are in from an important poll showing Sarah Palin as the GOP favorite with 70% favorability. While we will keep an eye on these stories and more this week, I really want to focus in on a couple of areas that I feel like we need to help us get through the maze of the craziness in our world today. I'm going to talk about how deconstruction, universalism, and mysticism even are changing the face and substance of our nation and the church in our nation today. What does that look like? Why do we need to look at this? Because a weak church makes for a weak nation, as we saw in Hitler's Germany and other such historical events. This month at Changing Worldviews, our emphasis is on remembering history, because those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. Remembering history is learning from history, and it's a major key to not repeating it. And so all month we're going to be pointing to and pointing out history, real history, not the rewritten versions. And today we're going to talk about what deconstruction is and the role that it plays in preventing us from learning from history. So stay with me. We'll be right back.
Currently, education and intellectual life in the United States and many other countries are being destroyed by the triple plague of political correctness, postmodernism, and the so-called deconstructionism. After the collapse of Marxism in much of the world, the forces of evil in philosophy and epistemology are now increasingly arrayed under the banner of deconstructionism, which offers a place of regroupment for fascists, communists, irrationalists, and bankrupt ideologues of every sort. So if you were wondering what the face of the enemy looked like after the fall of the Berlin Wall, this is it.
Exposing the worldviews behind the political, cultural, and ideological wars being waged in our nation and world, Sharon packs an hour's worth of information into every half hour with news you can use.
We have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it.
Things are being put in place that could change the American way of life forever unless we get off the wrong paths and get back on the right ones that are proven, safe, secure, and healthy for our generation and future ones. We're going to be in trouble.
A new world order.
Never waste a good crisis.
A world order that I think all of us would like to see.
The United States does not accept the legitimacy of continued Israeli settlements. It is time for these settlements to stop.
Hamas exists to destroy Israel. Their mission is to kill Israelis, to kill Jews.
However, just because evil men have plans to wipe our freedoms off the map, or Israel off the map, or whatever, in order to rule the world, it doesn't mean that it will happen. At least it doesn't have to happen here in America.
Won't you help reach even more listeners with a financial donation? Go to www.changingworldviews.com, donate page, and give either a one-time contribution or become a monthly partner. Or send your check to Changing World Views, P.O. Box 750-624, Petaluma, California, 94975-0624.
Well, thanks for staying with me, everyone. I mentioned before the break Larry Anderson, who's a writer, actually senior editor for American Thinker. He's an award-winning author, and his latest book, The Death of Culture, asks the question, is deconstructionism a valid way to interpret the Bible? But let's look at what deconstructionism really is. It actually is a late 20th century theory that concentrates on finding, quote, ruptures or inconsistencies in a text, and thus enabling the critic to break down or reconstruct it. And such deconstruction consists of asserting a personally or communally relative interpretation without claiming that any text or interpretation has objective truth or meaning. Deconstructionism is a specific kind of postmodernism. Okay, what does all that mean? Basically, deconstructionism looks for purposely to find any kind of inconsistency, whether it has to do with history or whether it has to do with the Bible or anything, so that it can deconstruct it. In other words, change it. Another word is to tear it down. I mean, when you're constructing a house or building, you're building it. If you're deconstructing it, you are tearing it down and putting it together in ways that were not the original. Well, as I said, deconstructionism is a specific kind of postmodernism. And what is postmodernism? It really is a radical form of relativism, which holds that there are no privileged viewpoints and that objective knowledge is effectively unattainable. In other words, there are no absolutes. In other words, we can't really know the truth about anything. Now, postmodernism is opposed to objectivism. And what is objectivism? That is the doctrine that reality exists outside of the mind and that entities retain their identity no matter what human beings think or feel about them or wish it were so, etc. I found this great website that lists out all these definitions out of the book, which is called Ism Book. And all it is just a book of definitions of all the different isms that there are. So we've got deconstructionism, the tearing down a belief system such as the text of the Bible or historical records and the like. We've got postmodernism, which lends itself to that, which likes that, because postmodernism is a radical form of relativism, which believes everything is relative and there is no absolute truth, which is opposed to objectivism, which says there is truth, that there are things that exist and are true about them apart from whatever the human mind might think about it or want to believe about it. And Larry Anderson, in his excellent article, points out that it's been 20 years since the late Allen Bloom shook the intellectual elite in this country with the opening line of The Closing of the American Mind, when he said, quote, "There is one thing a professor can be absolutely certain of. Almost every student in America believes or says he believes that truth is relative." And why did Bloom say that? He said that it was pegged to relativism, and that relativism is necessary to openness. And this is a virtue, the only virtue, he says, which all primary education for more than 50 years has dedicated itself to inculcating: openness. So what are we talking about here? For 50 years, the educational system has been teaching relativism. And to those that favor relativism, which is everything is relative, there is no absolute truth, it's necessary to have an openness to all the various claims of truth. Larry Anderson points out something that I think is really important about relativism. And the reason I'm talking about all this today, not to get heady or anything, but this understanding of deconstructionism and relativism will help us understand how we got to where we are today in our nation, in our world, in the church. Because there are deconstructionists within the church that use this same kind of thinking to deconstruct people's understanding or beliefs about biblical truth. And that's where the danger is. And we're going to get into more of that on Wednesday and on Friday as we talk about universalism. So you do not want to miss those shows. But one thing that Larry Anderson points out about relativism and why this postmodern touchy-feely generation likes it is because it's easy on the conscience. If there is no truth out there, then there are no values out there either, right? I mean, rather, the only values out there are the subjective ones, the ones that we make up for ourselves or believe for ourselves, that we create and put there. So therefore, it is possible for us to agree to have this value as a shared value if you let me make my values and I let you make yours. I mean, right? We've been living with this for decades now. Well, that's truth for you, or that's your truth, but it's not truth for me. We have a generation that is running our government, running our education system, running every main venue in our culture that believes in relativism, or in other words, does not believe that you can really know truth. It's also known as, wait for it, tolerance. We're going to take a break here. When we come back, I want to play a segment of my interview we recorded earlier with Wesley J. Smith on his book and film, War on Humans. And I asked him about deconstructionism and how this breaking down of the solid places to stand, those things that are true. I mean, not just 1 + 1 = 2, but it's wrong to harm another human being. The basic moral and ethical tenets, the Judeo-Christian belief in the existence of God and that you can believe what God says. We'll get into that with Wesley when we get back from this break.
Changing Worldviews with Sharon Hughes, the late afternoon commute show that knows the importance of bringing concise commentary on the day's news.
Bibles that were later burned by the U.S. government. These holy books were confiscated about a year ago at Bagram Air Base in Afghanistan. An independent film aired by the Al Jazeera network had shown evangelical soldiers worshiping at Bagram and talking about ways to share their faith.
One of my proudest moments was when we were able to repeal Don't Ask, Don't Tell. It was not an easy process. There were some who doubted whether we'd ever get it done. This is done.
No sitting president has ever done what Barack Obama did yesterday.
And it's not just a matter of head, it's a matter of heart. It's who I am. It's what I care about.
It's time to wake up, America. Radical agendas that are finding ways to mainstream themselves into public policy, including here in the United States. It's time to pay attention and read between the words of the speeches of our leaders, from our president all the way down, and take off the rose-colored glasses and look at things as they really are.
If you'd like to change the world, won't you partner with us? For a donation of $15 a month, you'll receive our monthly Best of the Best program on CD and Sharon's monthly Saying It Like It Is letter. Just go to changingworldviews.com/donation page and sign up online. Or send your first $15 donation to Changing Worldviews, P.O. Box 750624, Petaluma, California 94975-0624.
Well, thank you for staying with us, ladies and gentlemen. Again, I don't want to be too heady here, but I think that it's important for us not only to remember history, but to understand the worldviews, the kinds of thinking that led to things such as Hitler's Germany and how the devaluing of human beings, particular races, could lead to the horrors of the Holocaust. And today, how the deconstruction of the value of what God says about human beings that are so valuable that He sent His only Son, Jesus Christ. God became man and died on the cross for us, for humans, not for animals, not for the earth. Here's part of what Wesley J. Smith of the Discovery Institute, author, film producer, Human Exceptionalism for National Review Online. Here's that. Learning from history. You know, I don't know who Dr. Willard Galen is, but he said this in relation to euthanasia, which brings me into a subject that I talked to you briefly about pre-show, about deconstruction, because I think it's important as we're talking about the worldviews behind issues. But Dr. Willard Galen said, as it turns out, the difficult issue of euthanasia could be avoided by redefining death. And that's part of what it is, isn't it, Wesley? I mean, the war on words even. And we're talking all this week about deconstruction and universalism, all those kinds of issues. But I think that the deconstruction issue applies here in tearing down a worldview of value by finding, quote, some kind of inconsistency. And isn't that what Darwinism is about? This whole idea of redefining death, that's what deconstruction is. It's tearing down in order to replace it with something else.
It's very subversive to Western civilization. Western civilization, which is the most successful in the history of our species, we've had more freedom, we've had more wealth, we've had more mitigation of suffering, we have had more advances, we have people living longer and living better. And that came about because of the Western civilization's belief in the unique dignity of human life. This is not necessarily religious, but it is a Judeo-Christian moral philosophy. That is what it is based on. There's some Hippocratic values. Hippocrates, of course, had a very sanctity of life, Hippocratic oath, way before Christianity, and he also had a human equality oath. He said that for the doctor, there could be no difference between slave and master. Imagine that 500 years before Christ in Greece, when slavery was considered a matter of course, that the doctor was not to have a distinction between slave and master. Hippocrates also said no to euthanasia. He said no to abortion and other things, which is why doctors don't take the Hippocratic Oath anymore. Because for some reason, and I think there's some of this is, as you said, if you don't perfectly apply your principles, there's hypocrisy, and of course there's been hypocrisy in the West. Thomas Jefferson, who wrote, "We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal," held slaves. That's hypocrisy. But you don't throw out the baby, which is the all men are created equal, with the bathwater because Thomas Jefferson was an imperfect messenger. You better apply the message.
Unbelievable. Well, Wesley, before we have you give information, the best way to get a hold of your books, your film based on war on humans, what would you like to say? If you had an audience, you could speak to all Americans regarding this issue, bottom line it out for us, and where do you see this going?
Well, if this thing continues, you're going to see more loss of human freedom, loss of human life, and loss of human thriving and prosperity. You're going to see people kept mired in poverty. You're going to see a reduction of prosperity. Enemy number one in terms of the environmental movement, other than global warming, is the Alberta Tar Sands, which has the tremendous potential to make us independent of Middle Eastern oil. which is what we've been saying we wanted for decades, and here it is, and there are terrible, in my view, attempts to thwart it from occurring. They're trying to criminalize large-scale resource development by something called ecocide, ECOCIDE. Ecocide seeks to turn things like the Alberta Tar Sands into a crime against peace akin to genocide. Once again, you see this moral equivalence between nature and the worst evils ever perpetrated against humans. The second, so be aware of it, A. Second thing is talk to your children and see what they're being taught. I have a friend who was driving his granddaughter in the Sierras, and they pulled over to get some food at a restaurant, and there was an earth digger, and this little girl was just over 3, and she started screaming, and she said, Grandpa, they're hurting the earth. He said, what are you saying? And apparently she'd been taught in her Episcopalian nursery school that using the earth for human purposes hurts the earth and is in danger of killing it. These kids are being scared. One of the things all my other books have been hardcover, but one of the things that I've liked about writing this ebook is, one, you could focus it more, so it's 100 pages. You don't have to carry 300 pages. This is a really focused book. And secondly, it allows you not to just describe the things you're talking about, but to link to them directly so that people can hit the link and see it for themselves. There's an ad that I linked to called the No Pressure ad. It's for something called the 10-10 campaign, which seeks to get people to reduce their carbon output by 10% to stop global warming. And it shows an elementary school class and a teacher. And the teacher says, this is the 10-10 campaign, and here's some of the things we can do. Who's going to do it? And all the kids go, yay! And then she said, and who is it? And 2 children raise their hands, and they go, I just don't think it's really there. And she says, well, don't worry, no pressure. She pushes a red button, and those kids explode in a bloody, vivid, realistic mess. So what are these kids being taught? That if you do not believe the right thing about global warming, you deserve to die. And this was defended by the creator of the ad by saying, 300,000 people are dying a year of global warming, which is baloney. So we are justified in doing this. It wasn't a satire. It was meant to scare the you-know-what out of little children. And I have a link in my War on Humans book to that ad so people can see it. There was something else called Professor Shinkys' greenhouse calculator. Now, this was on, just to again show you that this isn't people in a corner wearing pyramids made out of tinfoil, right? This is very mainstream stuff. Professor Shinkys' greenhouse calculator was on the Australian Broadcasting Corporation website for several years. It's gone now. But for several years it was on there. And it was a child's game. And ABC is the equivalent of our PBS or the British BBC. This game told kids how long they should live, when they should die, because they will have used up their share of resources on the planet. And their little icon was a pig. So they played this game as a pig, and when they hit the time when they'd used up their share of resources, the pig explodes. I took the game. I should have died at 7.4 years. That game on the mainstream website for children taught children they were pigs for using up Earth resources and they should die young. This to save the Earth. This is very insidious, subversive stuff. Ask your children, what are you being taught about the nature of human life? Are you being taught that we're killing the Earth? Are you being taught that we have to not have children so that the Earth can live? You might be surprised and shocked what you find out.
Wow. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, absolutely. And I'll have to say, if you're not outraged, you're not paying attention. These kinds of things should get the hair up on the back of your neck because... And if it doesn't, then there's something wrong with your little discerner button there.
Here's what I'm worried about. There's just so much stuff happening, just a complete assault on almost every aspect of life, as many, considering who your audience is, most people in your audience think is basically a self-evident truth, that I think there's a kind of an exhaustion setting in. And there are people saying, fine, just do what you want, leave me alone. The problem with that is if they just do what they want, it'll destroy what we have created over the last several hundred years as the greatest civilization we've ever had. But the other part is they're not going to leave you alone. This is a a alternative or a competing worldview that seeks to supplant and destroy the worldview your listeners hold dear, and that they would like to see their children and grandchildren enjoy and benefit from. They are out to destroy it. They think it'll save the earth, but it doesn't matter what they think. What it will do is bring greater authoritarianism, less prosperity, and real threat to the vulnerable among us. It's something that people are not going to be able to run away from.
Yes. Well, and as long as you keep doing what you're doing, and there are those that help get the message out, hopefully enough people will wake up and not fall for it, and especially watch what your kids and your grandkids are learning at school.
Participate in letters to the editor. Of course, the LA Times has now said they will not run any letter to the editor that questions global warming. So you see already this kind of authoritarianism and loss of free discussion of ideas. Participate in web content, but web discussions. When somebody says, oh gosh, we're just such a cancer on the planet, say, no, we're not. Do you really think that? And help correct them, because public opinion is really not molded by me on the radio. It's molded by people over the dinner table. It's molded at church. It's at work, over the back fence, at the kids' soccer game when you're talking to the mother next to you or the father next to you. Be activists in that sense. That doesn't mean you have to go out and give speeches, but be aware and have these polite conversations pointing out, when we were young, I remember as a white person, people were saying to us, you have to defend black folk when there's no black folk around within a white discussion. And that really worked. I can't tell you the last time, Sharon, I heard a racist joke. It's been so long, it's been decades, because people took that to heart. That's exactly the right approach. We should not permit this kind of human beings are maggots on the earth discussion to stand. We should say, no, we're not, and then push back and be aware with facts.
And so with that, ladies and gentlemen, I want to encourage you to get a hold of Wesley's ebook, War on Humans, and the film. This month at Changing Worldviews is Remember History Month. Those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. While there are various versions of that quote, nonetheless, its sentiment rings true to all lovers of truth. Remembering history, in other words, learning from it, is a key to not repeating it. And all month long, we are going to be pointing to and pointing out history, real history, not the rewritten versions. And to go along with that, our special offer this month, yours for a donation of $25 or more, is a 4-part CD series with 10-time Pulitzer Prize nominee Edwin Black on the War on the Weak and IBM and the Holocaust. It's all about Hitler, Israel, and the United States, a very important part of history that we may think we know, but have we learned everything from that part of history we need to? And are we passing on real history to our kids and our grandkids?
Oh, in fact, Hitler wrote fan mail to the associates of Margaret Sanger of Planned Parenthood, who also was a eugenicist and who wished to eliminate the existence of 2/3 of humanity through her methods. I can tell you that Mia Jamad is attempting to do in 12 minutes what Hitler could not do in 12 years. Virtually all forms of genocide in the last 200 years that I have studied have emanated and been cultivated at the university level.
I'd love to send you this 4-part CD series, War on the Weak and IBM and the Holocaust with Edwin Black, for a donation of $25 or more. Send your check to Changing Worldviews, P.O. Box 750624, Petaluma, California 94975-0624. Or you can go to changingworldviews.com, click on the donate button, and the one-time donation for monthly special, changingworldviews.com. Dwayne will give the address again. Well, that's it, ladies and gentlemen. So let me encourage you, as you listen to the news and you seek to educate yourself on the issues, it doesn't have to stop there. That actually is not the end of the story. There's actually a God in heaven who knows what's going on. And there's also a record that he left as a plumb line to know what is the truth. So you might want to read that plumb line. So until I see you tomorrow, this is Sharon Hughes saying it like it is.
Thanks for listening to Changing Worldviews with Sharon Hughes. You can get more information on today's topic or order a CD of today's show by visiting changingworldviews.com or writing us at Changing Worldviews, P.O. Box 750624, Petaluma, California, 94975-0624. You can also contact us at talk@changingworldviews.com. That's talk@changingworldviews.com. Our program is listener-supported, and we appreciate your tax-deductible donations to help us get the truth out on the important issues Sharon addresses on the show. So until next time, remember, stay alert, stay informed. We live in a changing world.